Good morning, everybody. I think I'm live, right? Welcome back to the daily MCQ sessions with current affairs. Today we will be dealing with the 9th November 2021 daily MCQs. Good morning, Shubhankar. Chalo, let's directly get into the first article. Our first article deals with the solar and the sun lights up aurora in the high altitude countries. This article primarily talks about the solar flares on the sun and its reaching onto the Earth's atmosphere and its impact on the Earth's atmosphere. An organization from the ISER is Indian Institute for Science and Educational Research Institute, which one of its wing named CESI, Center of Excellence in Space Sciences, has predicted that the Earth is going to be impacted by the solar flares which are being erupted on the surface of the sun. We'll try to understand what are solar flares, what are sunspots, what is coronal mass ejection and its impact on the Earth's atmosphere and the lighting of the aurora in the northern poles and the southern poles. This article said that, see, firstly we'll see into the aurora. What you see here are the lights of the aurora. This phenomena occurs both at northern pole and the southern pole. We'll try to understand why is it only pertaining to the north pole and the south pole. See, every celestial body, whether it's sun, moon, earth, whatever it is, it has some kind of magnetic field, and one such it has its own magnetic field. Imagine if this is sun and this is earth. Sun also has its own magnetic field and its gravity. Same way, earth also has its own magnetic field and gravity. As this is the north pole and this is south pole, the magnetic field lines of the earth are like this, as most of you all know. Now, sun, it's a hot body with hydrogen or hydrogen bombs of billion scale at the sunspots can be found. Let us look into what are sunspots first. In order to understand sunspots, firstly you have to understand that the sun also has its own magnetic field, and this magnetic field, within the interiors of the sun there can be a magnetic field disruptions, and whenever these disruptions and these cycles happen, this emerges onto the surface of the sun, and when they emerges onto the surface of the sun and they cool down, this cool down mass or cool down region of the sun is called a sunspot, right? Whenever this sunspot surfaces, along with this there are certain solar flares you can find, and these solar flares try to erupt. When these erupt, they try to reach the earth, right? Whenever they try to reach the earth, because of the earth's magnetic field across the equator, it is more, whereas in the northern pole and the southern pole there is a huge flux left out, and this flux is filled with these high energy particles, and the interaction of these high energy particles of these solar flares which are erupted from the sunspots or the surface of the sun is called a particular light pattern which you see here is called the auroras. In the northern hemisphere it is called aurora polaris or the aurora borealis. In the southern hemisphere it's called aurora australis, right? Now let us see. This is the example of the auroras. I hope you understood the concept behind the formation of these auroras. Now we should also understand the concept of coronal mass ejection. In this coronal mass ejection, see, whenever the sunspots releases flares they are called sun flares. Sun flares reach the Earth's atmosphere, and in the interaction of these high energy particles, the the Earth's northern poles react to this and they show a similar pattern of colors, and this is called auroras. Now, another concept called coronal mass ejection. This coronal mass ejection is sometimes the plasma from the sun interiors, they are also thrown out. When the plasma is thrown out, the plasma has an energy of 1 billion atomic bombs. That's a very massive scale of energy which erupts. When this scale of energy erupts, they come to the Earth's atmosphere and it disrupts the Earth's atmosphere. This is called coronal mass ejection, and this has a huge impact on the Earth's atmosphere, like disruptions of the cable networks or the power generation units. So one such incident has happened in the early 1980s or the early 1980s and the late 1980s in the Canada. So let us look into the definition aspects of the coronal mass ejection. See, coronal mass ejection is a significant release of plasma accompanying magnetic field from the solar corona. They are often followed by solar flares, and solar flares on reaching the Earth cause a spectacular light show. This is called auroras. And solar flares can also disrupt radio transmissions, as I told you, and they can harm the satellites and astronauts. This has been predicted by the SESI, which is a wing of ICER, right? It is based in Kolkata. SESI means Center of Excellence in Space Sciences, India, right? Now, what is its impact on the atmosphere, and how did the SESI as an organization found out or predict this solar radiations coming from the sun? They have found out using the L1 point or the Lagrange point. This Lagrange point, you will see, suppose this is sun, this is earth. Lagrange points are points where if a satellite is put in that particular orbit or a place, it stays put. Put means it stays there and it orbits within the range bound area of both the gravitational pulls. For example, this is sun and this is earth. The gravitational pull of both the sun and the earth at these points are more or less same, which is equivalent to the centripetal forces of these bodies. That's why they tend to stay at a place where they are, and easily it can be observed. What can be observed here? The solar radiations can be studied and observed. So there are total 5 Lagrange points. Out of these 5 Lagrange points, L2, L1, L3, they are called unstable Lagrange points. L4 and L5 are called the stable Lagrange points. They are called stable because from this orbit they can clearly observe both the bodies, celestial bodies, right? Now, let's look into the definition aspect. At Lagrange points, the gravitational pull of two large masses precisely equals the centripetal force required for a small object to move with them. These points in space can be used by spacecrafts to reduce fuel consumption and need to remain in position, right? Now, unstable and stability we have looked into. India has also planned to launch a satellite onto the Lagrange point. That's called Aditya L1 mission. We'll also look into the question aspects on the Aditya L1 mission. Before that, let's solve a question. The question here is, consider the following statements with respect to coronal mass ejection. Statement 1, it can affect the electronics within satellites and affect astronauts. Very powerful Earth directed coronal mass ejection can cause failure of power grids and affect oil pipelines and deep sea cables. Statement 3, they can also cause spectacular aurora in the high altitude and polar countries. Right? See, statement 1 is right. Whenever the solar flares in the form of coronal mass ejection comes in, it can impact the satellites and the electronics in the satellites, and they can get disrupted. Second statement is also right. Very powerful earth directed coronal mass ejection can cause failure of the power grids and affect oil pipelines. In the year 1989, Canada has faced with this situation. They can also cause spectacular aurora in the high altitude and polar countries. This phenomena recently during the time of Diwali has been found out in the polar regions, and it is predicted by the SESI organization, as I told you, and they are almost very much accurate. So this becomes important for the launch of the Aditya L1 mission, which is going to be launched in the early 2022, right? So here the answer would be D, all of the above. Next, let us also look into a question based on the Aditya L1 mission. Consider the following statements regarding Aditya L1 mission. Statement 1, the main objective of the Aditya L1 mission is that it will help in tracking earth directed storms and predict its impact through solar observations. Second statement, it is the first dedicated Indian astronomy mission aimed at studying celestial sources in X-ray optical and UV spectral bands simultaneously. Statement 1, it is a right statement. See, from here you can clearly understand these are meant for studying the sun and its impact on the earth, or studying the sun as an atmosphere or as a celestial body. This is what is stated in the first statement. Next, statement 2, it is the first dedicated Indian astronomy. No, already a satellite named AstroSat, has already been put into an orbit. This is not the first satellite which is planned to be launched. First satellite has already been launched, that's in the name of AstroSat, which is aimed at studying the X-ray optical and UV spectral band simultaneously of the sun. So here the first answer would be only 1. The answer would be only 1, right? As I said, AstroSat is the first dedicated Indian astronomy mission aimed at studying celestial sources, right? Next, our second article for today. This is an article a couple of days back is given in the newspaper, and it's a series of issued articles are also figuring in the other newspapers as well. That's why I've taken up this issue. Center has cut some duty onto the edible oils. See, as such, cutting some prices on the edible oils is not an important news. What becomes important is the mission behind this and how are we as an India are able to stabilize the oil prices in spite of global oil prices have been impacted. What becomes important for us is the National Edible Oil Mission, or the National Edible Oil Mission oil palm. The government of India has planned to stabilize the prices, increase the production, as well as to increase the income of the farmers who are into edible oil production, right? For that, it has launched a mission named National Edible Oil Mission oil palm. Oil palm is, this is specially meant for the palm oil. Why palm oil? Because of the total amount of edible oil which we import, only 45% is what we produce, rest everything we import. In this, of the total 100%, 55% of the total edible oil we import is palm oil, right? Palm oil alone accounts for 55% of the total import. So that's why Government of India came with this scheme. The scheme is aimed at for a self-reliance edible oil within a period of 5 years. Now, what are the aims? The aim is to increase the farmers' income, to harness the domestic edible oil produce, because most of the produce is met by the imports, right? Next, to raise the domestic production of the palm oil by 3 times. 3 times means by 2025 to 26, the Government of India is planning to produce 11 lakh tons That means it is planning to increase 3 times. Currently our production is around 2.5 odd million tons, right? Next, raising the area under the cultivation of the palm oil. Once the area, sorry guys, once the area of the production increases, the farmer's income increases, as well as the imports which we import also reduces, and the production cost will also reduce as in when the technology comes into period. India, in spite of having such large coastal areas, we are still importing the palm oil. So now what should be the focus area for the development of this palm oil? The focus area would be areas across the coastline. So the government of India has planned to focus mostly on the northeastern states and Andaman Nicobar Islands. That's because these regions are mostly conducive to the production of the palm oil, right? And how is the government planning to do this? It is planning to do by giving some financial assistance and some technological aid or input subsidy of such kind of financial assistances. So let's look into some factual aspects of the palm oil. India is the largest consumer of the vegetable oil in the world. Of this, palm oil imports almost 55% of the total vegetable oil. As I told you, India is the largest consumer of the vegetable oil. Remember this statement. Next, palm oil is currently the world's most consumed vegetable oil. Yes, it is the most consumed vegetable oil. It is used extensively in the production of detergents, plastics, cosmetics, and biofuels. Top consumers of the world are India, China, and the European Union. And to increase the palm oil or the oil production, government has also come up with a revolution called Yellow Revolution. This becomes important for the prelims point of view. See, now let's solve a question based on the palm oil. Consider the following statements. India is the largest consumer of the vegetable oil in the world. Of this, palm oil imports are almost 55% of the total vegetable oil imports. Statement 2. India produces less than half of the roughly 2.4 crore tons of edible oil that it consumes annually. Look into the statements. Please post your answers in the comment section. See, statement 1 is right. Statement 1 is right. As I told you, 55% of the total oil that we import is only palm oil. Next, the statement 2 is India produces less than half the roughly 2.4 tons of the edible oil. At current production is we only produce 2.5. Our requirements are double what it is. So we are planning to, by 2024 or 2025, we are planning to go for tripling this production, which accounts for 11 lakh tons. So this answer would be, both the statements are correct. The answer would be C. And where does India imports its palm oil from? Palm oil and other edible oils. Mostly from palm oil is imported from Indonesia and Malaysia, soya oil from Brazil and Argentina, and sunflower oil mainly from Russia and Ukraine. See, from the ecological point of view, there is another article. Our next article is that polar bears, which are part of the Arctic region, are now able to, we are able to see in the Pacific Arctic region. This includes the northern part of the Northern America and Canada, and 40% or 50% of the total polar bears are found in these regions, especially in the Canadian part of the Arctic region. So there is a research which said that there is an increase in the ice shelves of the polar region. There is an increase in the ice shelves, and whenever this ice shelves increases, a certain algae that blooms there, and this algae acts as a good ecosystem for the tiny feedings on these algae. See, on the Arctic ice, whenever the algae blooms, these algae, they are fed by tiny animals. When these tiny animals comes into picture, which in turn this helps the fishes to come to this region, and when fishes comes in, following fishes, seals come in, and when seals come, polar bears also come to the new ice shelves region, right? A research said that in spite of the global climate change, there has been an increase in the ice shelves in the northern Arctic or Pacific Arctic region, right? So it is not always the ice is melting, the new ice is also forming in the polar Arctic region. Remember this statement. So we'll look into the factual aspects of the polar bear. Firstly, polar bears are classified as marine mammals. Why are they called marine mammals? Because these are mammals which feed on marine, but they stay on the coast or on the ice. Certain sheets of ice, on these sheets of ice, the polar bear tend to float along with the ice. When and where it gets to see the seals, it hunts, and 50% of the total time it spends living, it tries to hunt. Next, these marine mammals are at the top of the food chain and have an important role in the overall health of the marine environment. Why are they on the top of the food chain? And polar bears are also called as indicative species. Suppose if polar bears are found in certain region, this is an indication that this region has good ecological significance, or this region is stable with respect to ecology. And polar bears comes to a particular area only when there is a good ecosystem stability. What is this ecosystem stability? As I told you, they are the top on the food chain. Whenever the algae comes, following algae, some tiny animals, following these animals, fishes come, fishes followed by seals, seals followed by polar bears. That's why they are on the top of the food chain, right? The IUCN status of the polar bear is vulnerable, and polar bears generally have a thick layer, almost 10 to 15 inches of fat, and their coat is water repellent, and the color of the polar bears generally tend to be white, but it is actually a transparent fur. Because of the snow, it tends to give the color in the white format, right? So basically the color of the polar bear is more or less transparent. Polar bears feed mostly on the seals because seals have large amount of fat. Let's consider solving a question on this. Please post your answers in the comment section. For today's fourth question is, consider the following statements regarding with respect to the polar bear. Statement 1, polar bears inhibit loss of heat from their body by the help of their small ears and short tail. Second statement, the thick layer of fat in polar bears is called blubber. Third statement, polar bear lives in the habitat of Antarctica. Please post your answers in the comment section. Statement 1, polar bears inhibit loss of heat from their body by the help of their small ears and short tails. Statement 1 is right statement, because those animals which live in the polar regions or the colder regions, they generally have small ears, because ears and other bodily openings tend to lose heat. That's why those animals which live in the polar region generally tend to have more fat to maintain their heat and short openings to inhibit the heat from the body. Statement 1 is right. Statement 2, there is a thick layer of fat in the polar bears is called the blubber. Yes, it is called blubber, and it is a very thick layer, around 10 to 15 inches of thick layer of fat they have. Next, polar bear lives in the habitat of Antarctica. I see answers coming. Most of you are saying that it is a right statement. No, polar bears only live in the northern hemisphere, that too in the polar region, that is Arctic region. You don't find polar bears in the southern hemisphere. Here you find penguins, right? You find penguins in the southern hemisphere and polar bears in the northern hemisphere. They never lived together and they don't exist together, right? So here the answer would be Arctic, not Antarctica, right? Statement 1 and 2 is the right answer. Answer would be C, right? Penguins live in Antarctica while polar bears live in the Arctic. While they inhibit similar polar habits with loss of snow, lots of snow and ice, they never lived together. This is an important fact or an interesting fact which I. Next, the next question is, in the current affairs, you see Ethiopia is in news. Why is it in news? There is a region called Tigray. This Tigray is in conflict and rebels are fighting with the government there. From the current affairs point of view and the prelims point of view or the examination point of view, what becomes important is not Ethiopia as a country. When and where some kind of disturbances across the world happen, we need not look into each and every country, but what impact this country has over India, what impact this country has on India, this becomes important. If there is a huge impact, then it becomes important for examination. So let's look into this question from the examination point of view. This region, what you see, is called Tigray, the green and the red region. It has border with Sudan here and in the north Eritrea. There is an instability here. India and Ethiopia generally has a global trade of around 1.5 billion US dollars, and India gives a line of credit to the Ethiopia, and India also funds some certain projects of solar and housing projects and irrigation projects for the Ethiopian nation. So India as such, it is one of the global partner in terms of economic trade, because India gives funding to the state. So when there is some kind of disturbances here, India can also have some Indian economy can also be impacted with respect to those particular regions. So let's quickly look into a question on this based on the mapping point of view. Fifth question, the statement 1, Horn of Africa houses the countries of Djibouti, Eritrea, Ethiopia and Somalia. Statement 2, Tigray region is bordered by Red Sea. Statement 3, Ethiopia has bordered with Red Sea. Please post your answers in the comment section. Statement 1, Horn of Africa, Djibouti, Eritrea, Ethiopia and Somalia. Statement 2, Tigray region is bordered by Red Sea. Statement 3, Ethiopia has border with Red Sea. Now let's look into the map again. This Tigray, this region do not have border with Red Sea. In fact, Ethiopia as a country do not have border with Red Sea, right? Ethiopia do not have border with the Red Sea, but it is part of the Horn of African countries. See, Tigray region is bordered by Red Sea. No, the statement is wrong. Ethiopia has border with Red Sea. No, Ethiopia also do not have border with Red Sea. The statement 1 is right. Let's see a map here. This is Tigray region, Eritrea in the north, right, and Sudan to the west. Now, countries that border Red Sea are Sudan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Eritrea, Sana. Sana is the capital city of Yemen, and Yemen. These are the countries that border the Red Sea. Ethiopia do not have border with the Red Sea, right? So the correct answer would be C, option C. Only one, statement 1 is right. Tigray is bordered by Eritrea to the north and Sudan to the west. The Red Sea bordering countries are Egypt, Sudan, Eritrea, Djibouti, and one more country which is Yemen and Saudi Arabia, right? I hope this session has added some value to your preparation. If it has added value to your preparation, please share this content with other fellow mates of your other fellow aspirants and tell them that this is a valuable content available here. Thank you.